All right, today is August 13, 2020. This is the meeting of the Kubernetes Storage Special Interest Group. As a reminder, this meeting is public, recorded, and posted on YouTube. So on the agenda today, we have 2020 planning for the 119 release. Upcoming deadline is the cutting of the release itself, which is going to happen on August 25. So in this meeting, we want to get a end of quarter, end of release status update for all the projects that we've been working on for this release. And then in the next meeting on August 27, we will do a 120 planning session. So please come prepared for that, and we'll do planning for that at that point. So a reminder today is just an end of quarter or end of release planning. We want to get an end of quarter status. Let's change that to end of release, since releases are not aligned by quarter. Okay, so first item that we have is CSI online offline resizing volume expansion. Hemant, are you on the line by any chance? Okay, we will skip over that. Hemant tends to join later in the meeting, and we can come back and get a status update from him when he joins.
I'm here, sorry.
Oh, there we go. Hey, Hemant. So we were on the first item here. I wanted to get a end of release status from you on this. CSI online offline resizing volume expansion fix issues. And then you can talk about recovering from resize failures as well.
Yeah, so we made the only one pending item that we have in external Resize Controller, and I think similar fix will be needed. That is that when we expand PVC on the Resize Controller, we are reading from Informer to check the PV status, and sometimes the Informer has stale data. So it results in flakes. Basically, it doesn't affect end users, but it results in flake that we are trying to fix in the Resize Controller, and I should be able to fix it by today, tomorrow, and the other things are in, and that was for fixes. Then for recover from resize failure, I have pinged Tim, Hawkin, and Jordan multiple times about if they have a chance to either have a call or like think about whether the allocated resources field belongs or what we need to do. Obviously the code and everything is already ready and done, but I will maybe once the 119 release is done, then they will have more bandwidth to review that. So that's where it is.
Okay, sounds good. Would it be okay to mark the first one as completed?
We still have some issues that we moved, like so like the one where the PVC could be deleted while resize was pending, and read write many issue that did not make the cut because of the refactoring change.
Got it.
Requested. So
we'll pick those up in 120?
Yeah.
Okay, so then I'll keep it as started for now, and then that'll be a signal for us to carry this over to the 120 sheet once we create it.
Yeah, next week also I'm trying to schedule a call about resizing, and we can talk about for 120 plan in that call.
Yeah. Perfect, sounds good to me. Thanks, Aman. I think we've got both of these items covered. Next item is supporting containerized CSI node plugin in Windows with storage proxy. Deep, Jing, or anybody working on Windows on the call? Maybe KK? Anyone on the call familiar with what's going on with the Windows work, the CSI proxy?
Michelle said they continue to work on bug fixing. They are in good progress, on track. That's what I heard last time.
Yeah, Deep had cut an RC of the CSI proxy for beta, so I think they're getting in good shape.
Okay, glad to hear. And the goal this quarter was to move to beta, so that looks like it has been achieved. I'm gonna go ahead and mark that as completed. That'll be a signal for us to, when we carry it over, to change the milestone. Next item is snapshot fixing issues. Xing, you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so there are two main things that we want to get in before we cut the new release. One is to move the APIs and client to a separate Go module. So that one now is actually looking very close. So I think the PR is almost ready to go. And the second one is to add this validation hook. So Andy and Shangchen has been working on that. There is a cap that is being reviewed. Andy also submitted a PR, which is adding a boilerplate for the webhook. So so we're getting close. I think it's still on track to get it done at the end of the month. So I think I see Andy earlier. I don't know if he's still on the line. Do you want to add anything, Andy? Oh, see it's on chat. Do you want to add anything, Andy?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a work in progress PR. I'm not sure if there's anything more to add.
Okay.
And are we targeting the 119 release or the 120 release?
So 119 would like to get this one in.
Okay.
The webhook, because
Got it.
Because we need to do this like in couple of releases, making sure that we can GA in 1.20. So we'd like to get this one in 1.19.
Okay. And the API PR, what changes?
That one is almost ready. It just I just need to take another look. So I think it's already updated. Comments are addressed. I just need to do another review. So it's almost ready to go. So, so mainly just waiting for the validation hook thing. And there are some other bug fixing that are in progress, but mainly is this one, the validation hook. I think it's the big one that we need to get in.
And I think Michelle mentioned to me there were kind of some concerns that came up around validation. Do you guys want to talk about that at all?
So yeah, I think there are some concerns about like if you remove the if you make it more strict, and then there are some invalid API objects that can not get removed after that. Then basically, so basically meaning that then in user setup they will always have those. So I think for that one we don't really have a perfect way to completely get rid of those, because we don't want to like automatically deleting them, then it could result in data loss. So we want user to be the one who are responsible for removing those invalid objects. Michelle, are there other concerns from you and Jordan?
No, I don't think we have any major concerns. I think we've identified sort of a rollback procedure that would work if users get stuck in this situation. So I think that is sufficient.
Sounds good.
Well, one thing I want to add here is how we're gonna have the users know when it's okay to move on, to check that there's no invalid objects left in the cluster.
But okay, so that would not be something that we are checking automatically. Is that almost like this would be users' responsibility? Who are you?
Yeah, so I think something like developing like a script or a tool that's based off of the validation logic that we have, I think would be something we could potentially provide to make it easier, because otherwise like everyone has to write their own tool that does all the same things.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I think the one of the problems that we have seen is like the cluster upgrades could be blocked by objects that are stuck in like terminating state or like the states like that. So Like we have some end-to-end tests where we run the snapshot tests. And after that, we have this objects, volume snapshot objects that are stuck. And now that cluster cannot be upgraded because it has it has objects that are stuck in terminating state.
So those has to be removed before upgrade can continue.
Proceed. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So okay. So that looks like it's important to have this tool. Make sure that you're not stuck there.
Because upgrade process doesn't know how to migrate those objects, those things. Yeah. So it just gives up.
So for folks listening along, the issue here is that volume snapshot was moved to beta, but it didn't have a validation webhook. And so potentially you could craft a snapshot object or other related objects with invalid data or with invalid fields. And now in the 1.19 release, there is a webhook that's being released that does validation. And so any newly created objects will be properly validated. And if they're invalid, they'll be rejected at creation time. But the problem is that you have a set of existing objects that could potentially be invalid. And if you try to do mutations on them, what the challenge was, if you had the webhook installed and it was very strict, it would cause failure because your object was invalid and you would end up with objects that used to be okay, but as soon as you upgrade, they will no longer be okay. And so to work around that, the team decided to make the validation more lenient. So it will validate only new objects, but existing objects that are invalid, it will allow them to continue to exist for some period of time. And eventually the validation will be made more strict, as I understand it. What this means is that it gives users a chance to delete those invalid objects. And I guess the discussion here is how do you detect that you have invalid objects and remove them? And the suggestion is around creating some sort of tool to be able to detect that. Any other comments on this topic?
Is this something that could ultimately be generalized? I'm sure other groups are having similar problems.
Good question. Anyone want to take that?
So I think one action item we have from the discussion with API machinery folks is we're going to open up a feature request to API machinery so that their like the CRD backend can be more lenient in allowing a deletion flow for invalid objects. That if they can solve that at the CRD layer or the API server layer, then that kind of reduces the need for us to have to build all these out-of-band tools and things like that.
Oh, and also they have this immutable field cap that is not sure the status of that. Actually, if that one is there, then we don't have to go through all of this, right? So probably we need to.
Well, if we had, if like the CRD schema had all these validation features built into it when we initially released the APIs, then we would be in good shape because the CRD schema, like we wouldn't even need a validation webhook. But since we've released an API without using that schema, then adding it to a new schema will be a breaking change.
All right, so takeaway is if you're using snapshots beta, be aware of these changes in the new validation webhook and make sure your objects are valid. All right, moving on to the next item. We have non-recursive volume ownership, FS group, going to alpha. The last status update here was we're going to remain in alpha for 120. Is that still the case, Samant? Any changes here?
Yeah, that's the same case. I'll open up a new or update existing pretty soon, but we have a very good plan now.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll carry that over to 120. Next up is SE Linux recursive permission handling. Jan, are you on the line?
Yes, there is no update. We need to move it to 122.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll get that moved to 120. Next item is file permission handling for Windows, and I imagine this is the same status. Gonna get that moved to 120. Next item is file permission handling in projected service account volumes. This was completed, so no need for a status update on that. CSI in-tree read-only handling. This was never assigned, so we need to move that to 120. Next item is issues related to assuming volumes are mount points. I believe it was assigned to Andy. There were a number of PRs fixing various issues. Michelle, do you know where this ended up landing?
Yeah, I think we have a couple of PRs in flight, but they're not in 119, so we will
Okay.
be targeting 120 for those.
Okay. All right, we'll get that carried over. Next item is storage capacity tracking. That was completed. Do we have a final status here? I think last status was PRs an external provisioner.
Yeah, Patrick's still working on the external provisioner changes.
Okay.
I think, Jan, do you think it's close?
Yeah, I think it's close.
Okay. So we'll keep that as done. And then PVC inline ephemeral. It was done. So, okay. We'll just move on from that one. Spreading over failure domains, design. We said we will move this to 120. Sheng, any updates or?
No update yet.
Okay. Next item is volume group and.
Yeah, so I need to schedule next week. I'll schedule a meeting next week.
Sounds like we'll move that as well. And then CSI out of tree for the NFS driver was completed. And then CSI out of tree iSCSI driver. We were looking for folks. I think we didn't end up getting anyone, so we'll move that to 120. Fiber channel and flex, since nobody really was using these, the plan was to deprecate them.
Yeah, it's still on my plate. I just need to push the button. I will try to get that done in the next couple weeks.
Cool, sounds good to me. And do we want to move them to 120 or you want to keep them in 119?
I mean, it's all out of tree.
Okay.
I'm just going to push the deprecate or archive button on the thing soon.
Okay. I'll say preliminarily we're moving it to 120, meaning the 120 spreadsheet, and then we can remove it if needed. And so this is a call out to anybody on the call. If you are using fiber channel driver or you care to use it or you care about the CSI fiber channel driver and you don't want it to be deprecated, or then you should jump in, and this might be a good place to volunteer to help get this into good shape. Otherwise, it will be deprecated, as well as the flex adapter, which was useful in the early CSI days when there were a bunch of flex drivers, not a lot of CSI drivers. Folks were using this as a intermediate step, not much of a use for it anymore. So plan is to deprecate. Next set of items is for the Kubernetes incubator organization, which is being deprecated. One of the repos for the storage, Kubernetes storage SIG, underneath that organization is external storage. And since we want to deprecate, we want to make sure any items that were under that repo have a new home. if they are still important. The most important item there was the existing core static external provisioner, and that was pulled out already. And there were a number of other provisioners, external provisioners that were there that were highlighted as important and are in progress of being moved out. Gluster FS was one of the ones that is currently being moved out. This is currently in progress, and we're going to move this into 120. NFS, Karen, are you on the line?
Yeah. So the NFS server is moved, and I think I'm getting new PRs merged there.
Nice. And so do we want to move this
NFS
item to 120, or it's going to be completed before then?
Yeah, we can move. Right, we can move that to 120. Mainly the automation in terms of image creation is pending.
Okay. And then similar status.
Second,
Mm-hmm.
right. There's some CLA related issues that needs to be resolved, but I think we should be able to, yeah, similar status can be applied here. We'll be able to close that.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get those items moved over to the 120 spreadsheet. Next item here is deprecation of the storage, external storage repo that is dependent on the items above, so that will also get moved over.
So that one is actually already archived.
Done.
Already,
Oh,
yeah.
we did? Ah, interesting. How did we archive this before the items are complete?
Because those are actually already moved, right? I know, I think Karen,
the code is already available in the new repos.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the work
The
is
code
kind
is
of
already available
finished.
in the NFS. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if there is anything that is still left, then because it's archived, you can still move it. It's not like it doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. So there were only one thing was there were a lot of enhancements that came in after the initial moments. I went and tagged all those issues and PRs to take that into the new repo. So we are good there.
Got it. All right. Thanks a lot for all your work on that then. Complete. Next item is volume snapshot namespace transfer. This was a design. We didn't make too much progress on it, so we're going to go ahead and move it to 120. CSI volume health plan is, go ahead, Shing.
So yeah, so this one is looking good. There is just one more PR, one or two that we want to get in, but those are kind of small PRs, so should be in there soon. And then we are ready to cut a release.
Okay. And do we want to mark this as complete for alpha for this quarter?
I think, yeah, I think we can.
Sounds good. Thank you. Next up is the Object Storage API, also known as COSI. Jeff or Sid, do you want to give an update on this? Either of them on the line? Okay, I can provide an update here. So we had a KEP review meeting last week, and there's going to be another KEP review meeting right after this meeting on the same channel at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And they're working towards getting the KEP approved. They're hoping to get that approval after today's meeting, depending on the outcome of that meeting. So KEP review in process, meetings every Thursday. And if you're interested in joining those meetings, feel free to reach out to me. I can point you in the right direction. If you look at the SIG Storage calendar, in fact, you'll be able to find it without having to ask me. So that might be a better first option. Next item is CSI ephemeral volumes beta. The existing API for CSI ephemeral volumes wanted to do bug fixes here. Last status update was waiting for a generic solution, no updates, moved to 120. Is that still the case?
Yes, that's the case.
Okay.
Basically waiting how the discussion around generic inline volumes, well, generic ephemeral volumes and inline volumes and everything comes together.
Makes sense. All right, thank you, Jan. Then we have FS group support and CSI, which was marked as completed. Last status was there's a small PR out that needed API review. Was that completed?
Clayton did an initial review, and I just pinged him today to look at it again.
Okay.
This will still be an alpha without the PR. It just cleans up a few things.
Okay. And that PR is going to go into the next release, not 119?
That's my expectation.
Okay. Cool, thank you, Christian. Next item is vSphere CSI migration. I believe we have a meeting on Friday to discuss this. Anything else to add here?
I think, yeah, I think that's it. We are mainly just, yeah, waiting for that meeting. I think there are a few things we are still evaluating, but like to see what is the community decision on this deprecation timeline.
Mm-hmm.
One more comment just I had was not vSphere, but in general about the plugins that we are migrating. Like we are logging in the log, this plugin is deprecated, it will not be supported, and it gets logged each time find by plugin, find attachable plugin, that call is made. It's quite spammy actually, at least in some cases. Is that necessary? I think that
maybe we can move that check to the plugin load time. So it's logged once per binary execution rather than every usage.
Okay.
I would be okay with making it less spammy. Spammy sounds bad.
Okay, cool. I can make a PR for that.
Cool, thanks, Aman. Azure CSI migration, Andy from Microsoft was working on this. Last status update we had was Azure Disk was moved to beta, Azure file remained in alpha, and Azure file has dependencies that need to be resolved before GA. Any updates on that from anyone? Okay, we'll carry that over and then we'll break this out into Azure file and Azure Disk for the next quarter. AWS CSI migration. Any updates on this one? We're going to move that to 120. If any of you know folks at AWS who attend the storage SIG, maybe ask them to attend the next meeting on August 27 so that we can do planning and assignment properly. It would be good to get the ball rolling on this as well. Then we have OpenStack CSI for Cinder, and plan was to move that to 120. Then we have Ceph FS and Ceph RBD migration. Humble was working on that, and we're going to get that moved to 120 as well. Finally, we have a set of cross SIG items that we were working with other SIGs on. First up is SIG scalability, immutability of secrets and config maps. That work was completed. Second is with SIG apps, we have an issue where PVCs created by stateful set are not removed, and this issue wants to clean that up. Last status update here was that a KEP was created. And any other updates here?
Are you looking at the stateful set one?
Yeah, stateful set PVC.
I believe the cap, yeah, seen there was a cap there has been reviewed, I think.
Matt has been reviewing it.
Nice, okay. So we'll get that moved to 120. Do you think that it'll be ready to implement in the 120 timeframe?
I think so.
Okay.
It basically just needs sign off from us and SIGAPS.
Cool. All right, looks like good progress on that then. Next item is volume expansion for stateful sets. Last status here was KEP was raised, addressing comments. Anything else on this one?
I think KK is not there in the call today, but
No.
okay. So I had a call with him, I think last week, and where we discussed the KEP, and it is still missing some important details about the flow actually, and so I thought he's going to update the KEP with those details that we discussed in the call.
Okay. So it might be that 120 is going to be a design instead of an alpha.
It could become implementable, but it needs reviews from us and from like Jordan or Tim as well. So
okay, so we'll keep an eye on that and try to get that moving. Next item is execution hook. I think we have some good news around that. Sheng, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so we had another meeting with SIG and also Jordan and Tim also there. So we actually, it's a pretty good meeting. We reached consensus at the end. So there were a few decisions we made there to address the concerns from SIG side. Like we don't want to do retries in the kubelet. Only the external controller will be the one to do retry if it fails for the first time. And then also have a pod level status instead of each container has its own status. And then also we need to add a section to talk about what is the impact on kubelet if we are adding this feature. So, but actually after the meeting, there was Derek actually added the comment after the meeting because he couldn't join the meeting. He had a conflict. So he was asking us if we can do a POC outside of kubelet. So, and then Tim was saying that it's okay to do it outside, but then he does not want that to conflict with the final design, because I'm also not quite sure what that means. If we do a POC outside of kubelet, do we need another design for the POC itself? So that's the one thing that we have not yet resolved yet. I want to check with the team and see what is his idea, because that's the last thing. They have this comments in that doc. Didn't get a conclusion on that part yet.
Yeah, nice work driving that. This was pretty challenging. So for folks who are not familiar with the situation, we have kind of work that we want to push for the snapshot controller. Ideally, we want some way to be able to have a QS on QS hook so that before we take a snapshot, Kubernetes can ask an application to pause and flush its buffer so that we can achieve consistency. And Xing has been trying to drive this, I think, for a very long time. Initially, we thought this would be a standalone controller that would execute these QS and non-QS hooks. But I think the feedback that we received was we should make this generic because it's kind of a common problem across Kubernetes, being able to signal an arbitrary container or an arbitrary pod for various different other reasons. So try to make a generic API. And there was also pushback for security reasons not to be able to exec into an arbitrary pod or container and keep that logic centralized in kubelet. So Xing went to SIG node with a proposal, and they pushed back and said, this should actually be an external controller, not part of kubelet. We want to keep kubelet as small as possible. And is there really a need for a generic hook? And so Xing was kind of caught in the middle. It required multiple meetings to try and resolve that. And it looks like finally there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And there is consensus hopefully reached. Hopefully Derek's comments are going to be addressed soon, and we can make progress on this in 120. Thanks, Xing. Next item is the Kubernetes util mount library. We're going to go ahead and move that to 120. I think work was done but not completed. Michelle, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll get that moved over to 120. All right, thank you everyone for the updates. That's all I had in terms of getting a 1.19 update. And so next meeting on August 27, we're going to do 120 planning. I'm going to copy over the spreadsheet to 120, and we'll move over the items that we didn't complete. We can go over assignments, and any additional items that you want to add, please come prepared to the meeting to add those. You can add them as comments if you'd like ahead of time, and that would be okay as well. I'll send out a note before the next meeting about that. Beyond that, any PRs to discuss or designs to discuss, please speak up now, or anything else that you want to talk about. Okay, well, if there's nothing else to discuss, we'll end a little bit early today and give folks time back in their day, and we'll reconvene in 2 weeks. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.